Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all races, colors, and creeds, welcome back to the greatest show on earth, the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Today, you know what? Let's do something real interesting today. Let's talk about how the American elections are really rigged. I've got a great 9-minute video of someone who looked into this and kind of verifies a lot of what I've talked about, how this whole political situation is a theater. I enjoy it because once you kind of figure out things and realize how they operate, both the Democrats and Republicans using what I call and what is known as the Hegelian dialectic, which the mainstream media will never tell you, because the Democrats and Republicans actually work together at high levels. I'll show you today that Hillary Clinton actually knew Donald Trump was going to run for president before he even was nominated, and how she approved it in an email. Said, that's the guy I want to run against. So this whole thing is rigged. Now, do you know that Clintons, if you could do a genealogy, that the Clinton, Hillary, and Trump are long-lost cousins from elite families in England? Yeah, they're family members. The only way you get elected in America is if your bloodline is from Charlemagne. That's a great way to do it. So when you do your DNA search, folks, when you go and do your DNA search, make sure that you're from an elite family or from the bloodline of Charlemagne and then run for president. You may get selected. Otherwise, forget about it. This idea that anybody can become president in the United States is crazy, and I can show it to you today. We're going to talk, something. When you don't get this whole thing, you can't have fun with the political process in America. You get angry. If you're on the right, you get angry at the people on the left. If you're on the left, you get angry at the people on the right. But if you're like me, and that's why I say listen to my show, you're going to laugh and enjoy it because it's nothing but a long sitcom that's been going on for 100 years. The long-lost sitcom? Yeah. Once I said the longest sitcom in America is The Simpsons, right? It's been on for, 30 years. Most sitcoms run the longest one I can remember was, the ones I liked. The Sopranos was, 10 years? And then, did you know, if you go back to The Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason had it right. He was only on for about a year and a half or so, maybe only a year, and they asked him, successful. You can go and watch The Honeymooners. They're funny as hell. But they asked Jackie, why did you quit after only a year or so? He said, man, I didn't want my material to get, I didn't want my show. I wanted to go out on top. He said I couldn't come up with any more material, so I said to hell with it. Well, Gleason had it right. But why then are The Simpsons on for 30 years? Well, in some of their episodes, they actually tell you things that are going to happen in the future. They've predicted many, many things. And guess who runs that show? The people I talk about on this show. And they even selected, they showed you Donald Trump coming down that staircase 10 years before it happened. Amazing. The elections are rigged, folks. Then I'm going to show you, and I'm going to use a term here that's going to upset a few people. Not those who really understand maybe what's going on, or probably what's going on, or probable, if you looked at probable facts and cause, you can prove that this should be on the table of discussion. I'm saying that the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, all its minions in government, had their eyes set on America long before it was even formed. And they had to come up with a real slick new government to do this. And they did. Because in the past, they had created socialism, which led to communism, and I've explained that on this show in the Jesuit Paraguay reductions back in the 1600s. So there's a lot of facts that we should get to and understand why is there so much chaos in our country. Again, if you get to the bottom of it, you're going to have fun with it because you realize it's all theater. You're going to realize that the Democrats at the top, the Republicans at the top, the journalists who are on Fox, who are on CNN, they throw wood into the fire of this chaotic flame that's boiling over in America, that's burning high. You see the Democrats and the Republicans fighting like cats and dogs. And I tell you something, I don't even want to bring up cats and dogs. They're too good for this discussion because these guys are scoundrels. And I'm talking about the media members that know what's going on as well as the politicians. Now, a lot of things are thrown around the internet without any verification. And what I've tried to do is when I say there is a Jesuit connection to our country, I've tried to bring facts to show that at least should be discussed. And you can go back to my shows to verify that. So I don't like to throw around things without some kind of verification. Now, albeit it's difficult at times when you're talking about a secret society, when you're talking about these things that go back hundreds of years, when you even go back to the questions that I get when I bring this up, and the major one is always, where does this evil come from? And the second one is, what are you going to do about it once you realize it's true? And I tell you something, people that have been listening to my show for the last 15 years, some of them have emailed me and said, when I first listened to you, I couldn't believe it, and it just shook me up. But these were people that weren't afraid to get their belief system shook up, so to speak. And then maybe 5-10 years later, they said, Greg, a lot what you have told us and the people you've brought on over the years has proven to be at least enough evidence to bring this on the table, the mainstream table of discussion. But if it did, there'd be many more people like me who would sit back and only watch it for theater. Now, I want to say this. I am glad they chose and selected Donald Trump because I'm enjoying it. It's a great play. He's kind of funny to watch. He's basically draws these huge crowds. He's kind of like a political rock star, right? Fighting against all these people like Crooked Hillary. He loves giving names, right? Crooked Hillary, and on and on and on. So, guess what? Stick around because at the end of the show, I'm going to just deal quickly because I dealt with the subject before, where evil really comes from, maybe, and what do you do with it when you figure out the Vatican-led New World Order exists in America, and you're not supposed to talk about it because basically that's Catholic bashing. Yeah, Catholic bashing. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the idea that Rome is not only, and the Vatican is not only a religion, it's a state. And they hide behind religion to basically get you to shut up. Okay. Let me give you a quote here. Before we get into the Jesuit destiny to control this country, and I'm going to refer to some paragraphs from a book called Romantic or Rome's Depression, and also some things that passed on from a number of sites that go all over the place. And it's kind of a general outlook. And I'll try to add some of the facts I've brought up over the years that verify that there are generalities, that there are ideas that are being brought up, that the Jesuits had their sight on this country, used minions in government, here, as well as in the Protestant world, etc., the Jewish world, to get their way. I'll try to give you a few facts along the way because you got to understand that this is more than just a fight for the control of America, whether you be Donald Trump, America First, or whether you be a globalist. This is a complete takeover from a hidden agenda that's been going on for hundreds of years. So we'll get to that in a minute. But just to give you an idea of what goes on here, Let me tell you, a lot of times on the internet, you're going to hear a quote. Now, I'm going to give you a quote that was supposedly said, and you're going to make up your mind whether it was or not. But here's what you got to deal with. In 1981, who was the CIA director? It was William Casey. He's no longer with us. But he purportedly said, now Casey, you can check back. He's got Jesuit ties, etc., etc. But let's just go on what he said. He said, when everything the American people believe is a lie, then we will have done our job. Whew, that's a pretty damning quote. So he then knows that how do Americans get to form their beliefs, their political opinions? They must do it through the media as well. So he knows the media, the CIA, and everybody's working, the politicians are working together to make sure when everything the American people believe is a lie, then we will have done our job. Now, he supposedly said that. It's in 1981. Now, let me give you an example. I go back to quotes that were made in the 1700s that were verified even by Catholic publications and anti-Catholic publications that have passed through the years that seem not to matter. But there was a Jesuit general, the head of the Jesuit order. He was Jesuit Tamburini was his last name. He sat in Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque, and that's in Rome. That's the Jesuit headquarters in Rome. And he sat there looking out his window and said, you know, what's really great about us, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, is that we control China, we control Europe, we control every part of this world without anybody knowing. Okay, verified quote. But it doesn't matter to people because it was made in the 1700s, and supposedly it's very easy to debunk that. You can say, well, they've changed. That was then, this is now. But I say that same quote is very important today because they do that right here in America. Well, did William Casey say, when everything the American people believe is a lie, then we will have done our job? Well, the following information talks about it, okay? Now, originally, he said this, somebody said, we know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American people believes is a lie, okay? Now, originally, did he really say that? Okay, now that belongs to one person who verified it, okay? There was a person named May Brussels that, as far as people can tell, there was only one source, but that's what came out first for this attribution. And it was May Brussels. And if you go back, she was before the internet. If you go back to some of her programs that are still around, you'll find she's quite interesting, understands what we talk about here. This idea of Jesuitism taking over this country for Rome, and that Rome has had their minions here ever since the beginning, including our founding fathers. And that's it. So they said that at first, no one else said a researcher to his knowledge ever corroborated this. A single source tends to be problematic in that you have little way of knowing if it's fact accurate. Now, that's what first was said. So May Brussels was supposedly the only one. Then more people started researching, and this came up in 2014. And they said, no. Barbara Honegger also said this. And the original question was that Casey said, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Now, Casey's the source. Honegger said she was the source of this quote. It occurred in a 1981 meeting of newly elected President Reagan with his new cabinet secretaries to report to him on what they had learned about their agencies in the first couple of weeks of the administration. The meeting was in the Roosevelt Room in the West Wing of the White House, not far from the Cabinet Room. And she was present at the meeting as an assistant to the chief domestic policy advisor to Casey. okay, to the president. Casey first told Reagan that he'd been astonished to discover that 80% of intelligence that the analysis side of the CIA produced was based on public sources like newspapers and magazines. As he did to all other secretaries of the departments, Reagan asked what he saw as his goal as director of the CIA. In reply, which he said, thereafter, the White House correspondent Sarah McClendon, he replied that quote, okay? That was the quote. He replied to Reagan. Now, it doesn't surprise me because Reagan was the first president, then nobody talks about this, to bring in official diplomatic relations to the Vatican, to give them an embassy room building in Washington after formal diplomatic relations were cut off with the Vatican after they were pinned along with the Jesuits for the assassination of Lincoln. So Reagan knows what's going on. He was selected as well as a great actor, right? He was an actor, but he continued his acting role as president. So that's what they said. Now, Sarah McClendon, if you know about her, was also a close friend and colleague and made it public. Barbara Henninger said that now we have Sarah McClendon verifying this. We have Barbara Henninger verifying this. So now we have three people, and they even verified where the quote was mentioned in the White House in 1981 with Reagan. Now, Reagan is kind of like Trump. It's just now 2020 and a different agenda. And we'll get to Trump in a minute. But Greg Smith studied at the University of California, September 22nd, 2014, and he kind of talked about this as well and answered, well, this disinformation program is complete, the quote by Casey. And the quote was attributed online as reported by Brussels, and so it bounced off Barbara Henninger because I knew she worked for May back in the day, and here's what I got on the actual source, okay? And he got the actual email, okay? So, originally, the question is, did he say this? And we've got some verification that he did, okay? So, there you go. That's better than what we normally get, right, on the internet. So, here's the deal. A lot of these things that we talk about that are attributed to people, for example, when I discuss the evil, where did it come from? I may have to go back, way, way back, and I can get some verification of that from a heavy Masonic figure who's got a statue in Washington, which I never could figure out, Albert Pike, who can verify this. Okay, so we try to do it as best we can. And I might add, that's exactly what goes on in courts of law as well. Many people think that if you, for example, a criminal case, and you don't have any forensic evidence, you can get a lot of circumstantial evidence into it, making, not assumptions, but showing that 1 + 1 = 2. But what we're dealing with here, when we start talking about what's the political outlook of America, who controls America, etc., etc., when I deal here with the Jesuits, we're dealing with a philosophy that is sort of like this. We know anytime you hear the ends justify the means, that is what you're going to hear from. That's a Jesuit, that's in their Jesuit Bible. And so they have followers all over the place in this country, and we tried to, tell you who they are in many cases. But we're dealing with, when we're talking about 1 and 1 = 2, there are 1 half-truth and 1 half-truth equals the whole truth. So they bring half-truths and bring them all together to confuse the hell out of you. And that is kind of where I want to go to right now. Okay, let me finish this half hour. Okay, before I get into in the second half hour, and please come back, it's going to be great, how our elections are rigged. which you're going to find interesting. And why it's so much fun when you understand all this stuff, because you can really, for example, when the Trump rally comes on, I turn it on and laugh, have fun. When I listen to the liar Adam Schiff on the Democratic side talk, I have fun, I laugh, I go, boy, these guys are getting good. They're really getting, you know something? They should be the ones getting Emmys and Academy Awards, because this is the greatest political stage show I've ever seen in my life, and it's been going on ever since the formation of our country. Oh, we could have fun with this. Oh, yes, much fun. But let me just, since I got like 4 minutes here, maybe, and now they, you see these guys, my trusted friends. You ever try to get 6 dogs on an airplane and tell the people there at the airport, these are my service dogs, and telling them these are my service dogs? It doesn't work. Well, I was listening to a show the other day, and there's now a little horsey as a service dog. Yeah, like I said, there's a horse that has now been accredited as a service animal. Oh, that'll be fun on an airplane. I'm sure the horse would love that. I don't think a horse ever wanted to fly. But anyway, let me get back to this. Been a little bit distracted here. Oh, and now I know there's always a listener who says, how can you listen to this guy? He doesn't have a professional studio. I'm so tired of that. Did you ever, there's like 300 million professional studios now on these podcasts, and everybody wants to be a professional podcaster, so everything got to have they said to me, you got to have a soundproof room. You got to do all that. I said, you know what? I don't want to be professional. I really don't. Let's just tell the story. If the dogs bark, if somebody comes in the room, if I got to go take a leak, I'm going to do it. How's that? But anyway, let me get to this in a minute. Maybe in the second half hour, I'll get a little more specific before I show you, a little bit of information on how our elections are rigged. But anyway, people ask me where evil comes from. And I think that Albert Pike, in his book Morals and Dogma, you got to read that if you want to understand the occult, Freemasonry, what goes on in our country, because they got a big statue of him in Washington. He said that Freemasonry has been the custodian and depository of the symbols, emblems, and allegories erected by Enoch. That's going to give you a clue. And there's 2 Enochs in the Bible. And he tried to make you believe it was the good Enoch, but there's a bad Enoch. So that's going to give you a clue where evil comes from. Now, secondly, how do you deal with it when you understand that it could be something that's carried down? Now, that's what these people believe, from the mark of Cain. And you know that Cain terrorized evil with awesome dependability. And you remember in the Bible that God protected Cain, correct? After doing something really dastardly by killing his brother. And so there's a real story here that Bible believers, and even if you don't believe the Bible, you got to understand that these evildoers, these evil rulers, use it. So they must believe in it, right? So let's just look at what they believe in. So once you figure it out, what do you do? What do you actually do? And I'm going to give you a hint. Do you condemn these people? You try to overthrow them? Do you try to go en masse in Washington and do all these crazy things? What did Madonna say? Let's burn the White House. And that's from the left's point of view. Or do you want to, take up arms and go destroy the globalists? Do you want to be a person that condemns them? Or do you want to kind of reconcile this whole thing and be somebody different? Somebody who understands, but really does not want to overthrow? That is a really good question. I want you to answer. Maybe I'll give you my opinion on it in the second half hour. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app. for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the Supreme Jesuit Command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Talk fast, Greg. We got a lot to do this half hour, and I want to get it all in. You know, remember, the Supreme Jesuit Command, along with their minions in government, are watching you all the time through the NSA, through all of the things that we got cameras on every street corner. Boy, I'll tell you, they want to have eye recognition when you go to the airports. They want your fingerprints on everything you do. Boy, pretty soon we're not going to have any rights whatsoever, and you can thank your high-level politicians for working with these people that have been trying to overthrow or form this country first, then basically tear it apart so they can control it for ever since 1776. And we've showed you a lot of facts to show that. Now, I want to play for you it's about an 8-minute clip on somebody who put together a pretty good video on why these elections are rigged. And if you remember, let me give you a couple things we've always talked about. Every 4 years, there's something called the Al Smith Dinner. And this is when the nominee for the party that's not in power comes together with the president or who's ever running in the political party of power. And they have a big gala dinner. Black tie, the whole works. And guess who sits in the middle of these guys? It's sponsored it's the Cardinal of New York. Will sit in the middle of these two. And I'm looking at a picture now from the last one when Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, where they're having a ball. Hillary and Trump are laughing it up because they're long-lost cousins. And you know what? Why is the Cardinal from Rome sitting in the middle of this? That's because we've given you facts going way back to even Cardinal Spellman in New York. And I'm talking about people who said he was the most powerful person in America. Not me saying that, but actually New York police detectives and others that knew about his shenanigans not only in his pedophilia, but in how he operated, and really took the orders from Rome or the Jesuits and then implemented them here in America. He was also the chaplain of our military during the Vietnam War. These people are all over the place. So we got the cardinal every 4 years sitting between the two, saying, you better carry out our orders. And by the way, we're going to have a meeting in that tunnel between Georgetown Jesuit University and the White House every Friday, the day you can't eat meat. Remember how we used to do that? Yes, we'll meet there every Friday. But anyway, see how much fun you can have if you really understand these people? And if you take the opinion that I take, I'm not trying to revolt again. I don't care if they run this country into the ground. I really don't. There's not much we can do about it, but understand it and pass that along. But I'm not trying to revolt. I'm not even a threat to them. That's why they let me do this, because they know I'm something that's called a reconciler. I want to reconcile what the hell's going on before I leave this place. And maybe a lot of other people will pick it up. And in the meantime, I can enjoy it and not have a heart attack or go crazy and be angry all the time like they want you to be, so they can arrest you and put you away, because they will then say they're on the side of God. You ever hear that? We're on the side of God and government. How many times do you hear Trump saying, God, the government, everybody? They think they're on the side of God. Well, so did the Cain say that as well. Remember? Going way back, and they know that too. And the only reason I bring it up is because they use this. They use the Bible. So we got to understand it. And if you're an atheist or whatever, don't read it for, finding grace from God. Read it for historical fact, and you'll see some things that'll open your eyes up. But here we got, I'm looking at this picture of Clinton and Hillary and Trump having a ball, long-lost cousins. But I thought I would play this. Oh, one more thing to give you some facts that are interesting. Not only do they do this every presidential election, but every year. And you think we have a two-tiered justice system? Yes, we do. They're showing it to you. You've heard that. The Democrats, they can lie to Congress, do all these things and get away with it. Hillary can give away state secrets, bleach bid, throw away 33,000 emails. I love they use that number 33 all the time. Why wasn't it 34? But it's a little symbol that they tell each other. They're having fun with that. But anyway, they can do anything. But, if you're Michael Flynn, if you're Manafort, if you're Paul Manafort, if you're Roger Stone, or if you're Carter Page, if you're these people on the Trump side, you're going to get thrown in jail. So they're showing you this. Now, do you realize that every year, where does this come from? Who controls the justice system? Well, every year they celebrate a mass called the Red Mass. This started under John Paul II. And everybody, no matter if you're Catholic or not, for example, in Washington, the big politicians, the Supreme Court justices, everybody goes and celebrates a mass with the bishop or whoever. They do it in New York. They do it in all the big cities. The justice people get together and they celebrate a mass. You know who they're honoring this mass to? Sir Thomas More. He was one of the biggest inquisitors in England that you'll ever find. He was also, he was a lawyer, a justice. He was attorney general or whatever in England. He was the head guy. But he was an inquisitor, and they're honoring this inquisitor at this mass. Now, why would the Vatican get involved there? Because they control this stuff. And you can see decisions all over the place that protect them. I did a very good study of one case called Alprin v. Vatican Bank. And it showed you that the Ninth Circuit is in the pocket of the Vatican, because when they were asked, the jurisdiction in that case was to get reparations for their dastardly deeds during the Croatian genocide. And guess what? The defense was told that they wanted to get money, that the Vatican Bank, the courts made the decision that the Vatican Bank doesn't do business here. What a joke. They're protecting these guys. So anyway, just a couple facts to give you an idea why the Cardinal at this Al Smith dinner, and he'll be there again in November, when this election, right before the election, and you ask yourself why. But let's listen. Let's listen to this 9-minute clip done on why these elections are rigged. Interesting. Let's go.
Very, very suspicious of Donald Trump since he began his political run. Many believed he was an outsider who was our only hope to tame the U.S. federal government beast. But it has become very clear he is not. First, WikiLeaks showed that Hillary herself actually approved Trump to be her competitor. According to an email sent from an assistant at the Clinton campaign, Hillary was aware that Trump was going to run before the political process was fully underway. Clinton advised the mainstream media to push his legitimacy as a Pied Piper candidate because she realized, after looking at the poll numbers, that she wouldn't stand a chance at winning the presidency against any of the establishment Republicans without making them Pied Pipers. It just so happened that Donald was the easiest to play the role, considering his long history of friendship with the Clintons. In addition, the mainstream media was more than complicit in creating a narrative that the 2016 presidential elections were about Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump from the get-go. But barely reported in the media was that after the third presidential debate, Clinton and Trump went out for a night on the town together, and where they went is of great interest. They went to an annual Jesuit function, which is usually full of New World Order types. One of the more interesting things that occurred right at the end of the Jubilee year in early October was that the Jesuits installed a new superior general, with the date to commence being actually at midnight on the end of Jubilee. We found this interesting because there is plenty of evidence that the Jesuits are at least one major arm of what you can call the Illuminati. In fact, the Jesuits were founded in Spain by what various reports call crypto-Jews, those who are Jewish but pretending to be Catholic. Certainly at that time in Spain, it was safer not to be a Jew. Even Wikipedia, which wouldn't recognize a conspiracy if it were directly presented by its participants, has this to say about the Jesuits. In the first 30 years of the existence of the Society of Jesus, there were many Jesuit conversos, Catholic convert Jews, including the second father, General Diego Llenas. The original founder, Ignatius, said that he would take it as a special grace from our Lord to come from Jewish lineage. At the beginning of the Al Smith dinner party, after Cardinal Dolan was introduced, a joke was even made by a speaker.
Without the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. You know, Catholics like Henry Kissinger, Howard Rubinstein.
Henry Kissinger, Howard Rubinstein, and Mort Zuckerman, all of whom are obviously Jewish, so this remark was naturally met with a lot of laughter.
Okay, one thing I did want to mention is that this little presentation was done in October. Okay, it was done in October 2016. And also, I call these what he calls crypto Jews. I call them papal court Jews. And let's go back to the video.
In fact, an extraordinary amount of controversy swirls around Jesuits. They are said to constitute the Black Church and thus adhere to the same satanic religion as the world elite bankers supposedly hold. The leader of the Jesuit order is commonly recognized as the Black Pope, whose signature staff is a crooked cross. Historically, the Jesuit order has been seen as one that shirks no crime in expanding the power of the Church. Lest this sound entirely outrageous, one must note that the Jesuits are, for instance, the inventors of concentration camps which they established in Paraguay in order to incarcerate and then torture the native Indians of the area. But the litany of attributed Jesuit evil is even darker than that, according to those who believe in the order's continued malicious pursuit. The supposed founder of the Bavarian-based Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, was a Jesuit. In fact, the order is reputed to have been deeply involved in the Illuminati's initial expansion, and chances are it is still deeply involved. One more thing that highlights the evil of the Jesuits is their extreme oath of induction, which all superiors must take in order to be elevated to the higher rungs of the organization. This quote is taken from the book Subterranean Rome by Carlos Didier, translated from the French, and published in New York in 1843, and reads in part, "Promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their race. That's when the same cannot be done openly. I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. One of the most poignant quotes regarding the malevolence of the Jesuits comes from Marquis de Lafayette, 1757 to 1834, who was a French statesman and general who served in the American Continental Army under the command of General George Washington during the American Revolutionary War. His quote is as follows: "It is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe." When evaluating Jesuit behavior and influence, please keep in mind that both Donald Trump and Hillary's VP, Tim Kaine, are Jesuit educated. And it should be of great interest, therefore, that practically on the eve of the U.S. election, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton partied the night away at a Jesuit function that included such prominent Jesuit-trained attendees as Henry Kissinger. Not only did the two not look like sworn enemies, they looked like two star-crossed lovers going to their first prom. We have long held to our stance that Hillary will be the next president of the U.S. The amount of vote rigging, murders, and shenanigans to even get her to where she is so far has been tremendous, and it won't stop. That said, if by some fluke and the Diebold machines malfunction, or people in the U.S. wake up slightly and Donald Trump gets elected, it's pretty clear they are on the same team, and as we've said previously, nothing major will change. So if you were hoping that this election could change things in the U.S., get over that hope right now. It might change things, but only for the much, much worse. This charade is being played right in front of everyone's eyes, and most don't understand what's happening, or why jokes like the Catholic joke is actually funny to these elites. They're laughing at the peasant stupidity and lack of understanding, not because the men mentioned are Jews. Anyone with half a brain knows that. But while they laugh, we'll be laughing all the way to the bank ourselves. Just because these sick people are formulating diabolical plans to enslave humanity doesn't mean we can't profit from their planned chaos. It's better than sitting back in ignorance and making nothing. Our analysis of these elites' occult timelines, which began with the Shemitah and culminated with the Jubilee, have helped us to accumulate around a 200% collective return on our portfolio in the last year. You can subscribe to the Dollar Vigilante newsletter at dollarvigilante.com/subscribe to continue to receive the best insights into the inner workings of groups like the Jesuits and other arms and actions of the world's financial elite, and how to protect yourself and profit from it.
Okay, I wanted to give him a little shout out for that. But anyway, he was wrong as far as Hillary Clinton, but he was right when he said it wouldn't change. Okay, you're seeing a lot change in the days like right now. Everybody's like saying the country's in great shape, we want Trump, but they're really bringing together both the hatred for the left and the right by bringing these two parties together. But I'm going to ask you a question. You know, we talk a lot about what he just mentioned, and that is you can really see how they work together and how Trump is nothing but a stage actor. Hillary, the same, has long been working for the Jesuits, and you can go back to some of their mentors, which I've done on this show, which all are Jesuits, and really see this connection. So we try to talk about it, but I want to ask you a question. The other day we were talking about Lincoln and the assassination of Lincoln and who was behind it. And that's, if you read the facts, if you go back to the cases, go to some of the books written back when they can still be published, you'll find that there's no doubt the Vatican and Jesuits were involved in the killing of Lincoln as well as trying to kill many of his cabinet members. But did they do this other times in recorded history? I bet you if you looked at the assassinations of Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Garfield, McKinley, and Kennedy, as well as who did they also try to kill, but they didn't succeed? Let's see. It was Buchanan. They gave him the poison cup at the National Hotel, Washington, D.C., February 1857, but he escaped in the wholesale poisoning. He survived, in which 50 were affected and 38 died. So they killed 38 members there when they tried to poison everybody at this hotel. And Buchanan survived. So they've been involved in, we just said, 4, 5, 6, at least that we know of. And Buchanan, who was also poisoned. And so start looking at these facts. Who killed these people? Two of these guys, two of these presidents died of the same poisoning. And you have to really look deeply and see the connections between this organization and what they're doing today. It's amazing when you start really looking at it. But what I want to tell you is that once you do, it's really kind of entertaining. Now, let me get back at this question of what do you do if you understand that this evil and maybe have been carried on since the time of Cain, and these people, let's just for simplicity's sake, carry the mark of Cain and basically use the information the Jesuits have been collecting for years. You know they've been kicked out of more than 80 countries. And you know their past history, and you know that you can't say they've stopped doing it when you start looking at it today. Otherwise, this chaos wouldn't be going on in our country. And I've always said for years that these politicians aren't smart enough to do this, and there has to be an orchestration of this. Now, supposedly, when Clinton and Trump ran against each other, I believe they had that selected, and I remember even a year before predicting Trump would be president. And I tell you, I don't like to do predictions, but it really wouldn't have mattered. I think it's the reason they selected him was that it makes it even better, this whole idea. He's created more interest than Hillary could ever create because she's not a very appealing person, really. She's done her wicked deeds for the order. But this is really great theater, and I have to really commend them on their selection of this main character. And the question becomes, are they going to do it again for 4 more years? My idea is very simple. You know something? Like I said, when you understand what we're talking about here, and when you level these ideas, I try to give you some facts behind why. And also that there's enough to put on the table for people to discuss it. And my real question is, why don't they? I mean, why have we a big statue of Lincoln, a memorial of Lincoln, but we don't want to really tell the American people the truth about how he was killed? Does that make sense? Well, yeah. If it makes sense, going back to the quote that William Casey made, the CIA director in 1981, we will have done our job if the American public believes all our lies. And they have. That's where we're at. And he said it. Now, you know who he must have worked for. So I don't see the real Catholic bashing here. I don't think that Catholics, if they understood what their hierarchy was all about, would think that, and I'm a former Catholic. And I don't think that. I don't think it's Catholic bashing. Is anybody bashing me? I was a Catholic. No, I'm telling you that what you really need to do only is to understand and research what religion you were involved in when you were born and what country you grew up in, and start there. But as far as dealing with this, I kind of enjoy it. I mean, I'm having a ball listening to this, knowing that, it can't be. You're not going to change these people this late in the date, and do you want to? they're going to just fire back and say they have the authority of God and country, and you are the rebel. You are the one that belongs in jail, even though you're right. And that's the real idea here. If you're right, what do you do? What do you do? I think you basically just, and there's a real good analysis of this in a simple sentence, that I asked a good friend, well, he wasn't a good friend, but I got to know him doing interviews with Tupper Saucy, who wrote the book Rulers of Evil before he died. And he said, I asked him that same question. And he said, just make yourself available. Just let people know. Let them make up their own mind. Be what he said was a reconciler. Don't fall for them. Don't allow them to take your mind away. Don't allow them to be your master. But tell people to look into these things. Make yourself available. You then are not a threat. What are you going to... They're not going to say... You're only a threat when you get millions of people that want to overthrow what they're doing, and then they'll kill you or put you in jail. So what's the way? My solution for you is make yourself available. Tell people about it. And you never know what will happen. Well, what's going to happen in America? Well, if Trump gets in, then you got a few more years before socialism won't take a big stranglehold on you. But one day they will have their way, I think. I don't see any other way around it. So I'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.